It's a quiet beach on a summer morning, and long afternoons spent soaking up the sun. It's the radiant sunset gleaming over the sandbars, a summer place where one can relax and find peace. Together, these images reflect the magic of old Cape Cod. In season, the young and the young at heart come for a wide range of special attractions. For some, it's the solitude found among the dunes of the Cape Cod National Seashore, or the history and charm of a quaint old village. For others, it's the fishing, or a day of bird watching in the marshes. There's boating offshore with a chance to see the whales. Or perhaps just a quiet day to sail. The shops and streets of popular towns like Provincetown and Hyannis are sometimes so crowded there's hardly room to pass. Yet still, in subtle ways, everyone is drawn to the sea, a sea which has always provided for Cape Cod. 400 years ago, the first settlers were drawn by the rich fishing banks off the Cape. Among them was an Englishman named Bartholomew Gosnold, who proclaimed that around this cape, the codfish were so thick that you could walk upon their backs. Ever since, it's been known as Cape Cod. Cape Codders are still making their living off the sea. But today, the catch is the tourist, and the bait is the beach. Just offshore lie the islands of Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. Surrounded by ocean, they've become the summer places of choice for the rich and famous. On Martha's Vineyard, Victorian charm adorns a landscape where rolling hills meet the sea. While on Nantucket, early American seacoast traditions are kept alive in an old whaling capital. Together, the Cape and the islands whisper invitations to summer romance and endless discoveries. And they offer a chance to meet some of the interesting people that call the Cape home. Steve Morello is a naturalist studying whales in Provincetown.
After learning as much as possible, I found out that Cape Cod is, in fact, one of the best places in the world to find whales.
Alice Monju is an artist from Brewster.
I've chosen to work on Cape Cod because of its beauty.
Phil Schwind ran a charter boat out of Rock Harbor.
It's hard to say what the attraction on Cape Cod is to anybody that lives here and you're used to it.
Each of these people, and a number of others, help provide a picture of life on the Cape as it really is. After all, any worthwhile tour should give a person some insight on both the scenic attractions of an area and the lifestyles of its residents. So, why should a video tour be any different? Taken together, these pictures and stories should give both meaning and context to this, your video tour around Cape Cod and the islands. In Provincetown, on the tip of the Cape, one of the favored tourist activities is to go out on a whale watch. Steve Morello is a naturalist and an expert in whales.
You can go out on a boat offshore here, go in the ocean, and see the biggest of all animals that have ever been on the face of the earth doing what they do. You're going to essentially you're going to a wild habitat. One of the reasons that Provincetown is such a great place for seeing whales is because Cape Cod, which Provincetown is at the end of, already sticks 30 miles out into the ocean. Besides that, besides we're out here, the geological happenings in time that form Cape Cod also form the banks offshore. Essentially, it makes everything right for the whales and other types of marine life to exist here. On the way out, there's a naturalist or someone to explain about the whales. But once you get out there, the boat stops. The boat stops with the whales, and you get very, very close to them some of the time. There are a lot of different species of whales that you can find here. The whales that most people actually come to see are the humpback whales. They are the whales, more times than not, that if a whale is going to be performing, in other words, jumping or splashing and doing the exciting things that the industry really promotes, it's the humpbacks that are going to be doing that behavior. And there are a lot of different behaviors that you see the whales doing from the boat. It can be flipper slapping, where they take their pectoral flipper and they slam it down onto the surface of the water over and over again. Or lob tailing, which is doing the same with their flukes or their tails. Breaching, jumping completely out of the water. Essentially, these are unexplainable behaviors. You never know what the whales are going to be doing. And it's too bad that people have such great expectations sometimes, because they're witnessing some very incredible and very remarkable things. Even if the whale is just lying at the surface doing nothing, the fact that you're in that environment witnessing an endangered species doing what it does is very, very special. So the fact is that even though you're out there maybe for the first time, you may be seeing something that people who have been out there for 11 years have never seen before. Whale watching boats are a very good platform for researchers to get information. And you're a part of the data collection process. Without you being there, a lot of the researchers would not be able to get out onto a boat. In effect, the boats are bringing people closer to the whales. They're letting people know about the conditions of the environment offshore. And because of that, the awareness of the general public has been risen. And hopefully because of that, not only the whales, but all the other marine life that we find offshore here has a better chance.
The towns on the Cape different? They are different. They have a different personality, whether it's because of geography or what they eat or what is the reason, I don't know. Provincetown is certainly different from any of the rest of the Cape. Of course, Provincetown has a reputation for a lot of gays. It's been that way ever since I can remember. Strangely, the rest of the Cape is quite straight-laced as a rule, although there are stories in every town of somebody being in bed with somebody else's wife and being caught at it. Nobody minds of being in bed with his wife. Instead of getting caught at it, it's the difficult part.
We came here to get materials and play music to support ourselves, and the town has adopted us, and we were given permission to play here in the evenings.
There's a great deal of art, if that's what you call it, of painting in Provincetown that you don't see as much of. It's beginning to spread over the Cape. You see more artists now at Rock Harbor or wherever it is of the Wellfleet.
One of the most charming towns on the Cape is Wellfleet. It has long been famous for its oysters. That tradition is carried on today by oyster fishing families like Myron and Judy Taylor.
I've been living in Wellfleet 50 years. I was born on Commercial Street. Started fishing probably when I was 14. I went out on my first boat and started oystering, cohogging, and worked the shoreline quite a bit.
Originally, when the first white settlers came, they found large oyster banks filled with oysters, some of which were a foot long. In colonial times, the oysters were fished out, and in the 1800s, the big New York oyster companies found that if they brought oysters in from down south, either from the Chesapeake or from Connecticut or Long Island, and they brought them into Wellfleet and left them to soak in the creeks and rivers, that after a few weeks they would take on the distinctive flavor of Wellfleet oysters. I go down to the Oyster Grant on the low tide every day, and as soon as the area of the Grant where the oysters are growing is uncovered, then I go and I start picking up mature oysters. And since we have a 3-acre grant, they can be anywhere on the 3 acres, and it's my job to walk around. It's like a treasure hunt. And then we come down and take them all up at once, cull them out, because the oyster that you want to sell is an individual oyster, and oysters don't naturally grow that way. They tend to either clump together or attach to other shells or stones or anything they can find when they're babies. There's a real special feeling among the people who live here that things remain the way that they always have been. It's a small fishing community where people always made their living from the sea, and it's one of the few places on the Cape that preserves some of the old-time character before development.
Cape Cod is a creature of the Ice Age. After the ice caps had retreated, the ocean began carving away at the land. And the spot where we're standing now is built up by sands carried by the currents. We're in the Province Lands at the outer tip of outer Cape Cod. This is one of my favorite spots in all of Cape Cod National Seashore. I'm Frank Ackerman, Chief of Interpretation for Cape Cod National Seashore, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about some of its special places. Province Lands are one of the first areas in what today is the United States to have become publicly owned land. They were conveyed by the King of England to the Massachusetts colony in the 1600s. When Cape Cod National Seashore was created in 1961, Massachusetts gave the land to the United States. The scenic and natural wonders of Cape Cod National Seashore include the high dunes in the Province Lands, the vegetation and animal life, birds in particular, that you can see in a place like Nauset Marsh. And of course, the ocean itself should be mentioned. The ocean and the long, unbroken 40-mile stretch of outer beach with a gradual arc so that anywhere you stand on it, you're out of sight of other people. The great outer beach of Cape Cod is most people's first destination when they get here, and well, it should be, because not only is it a spectacular place to sun yourself and a relaxing place to be with the sound of the waves lapping against the land, but also it's different from the beaches of most of the other national seashores. Here at Cape Cod, we have the beach with a surf in front of it and the high cliffs rising behind, the cliffs of the coastal bank. And it's out of these cliffs that new beach material is excavated by each winter's storms. Storm watching in winter is a fascinating thing to do here because there are such tremendous, powerful forces that you can witness. And these were the forces that combined to produce the hazard to sail-powered navigation. And the winter shore of Cape Cod has always been one of the places that vied for the title of graveyard of the North Atlantic, so that the end result is that there were literally dozens of shipwrecks every winter. The station that we're in today is the Old Harbor Life Saving Station. We're in Provincetown at Race Point Beach. But this station was constructed by the U.S. Life Saving Service in the 1890s. The life-saving stations had a crew of perhaps a dozen surfmen who were on duty here from the start of the hurricane season in August. The ocean presents a changing vista at every season. But besides that, when you turn landward from the ocean, you come first to the places where there are bird watching opportunities. Nauset Marsh is the largest saltwater marsh that's almost wholly within Cape Cod National Seashore. You can see the sandpipers on the flats at low tide. You can see wading birds like great blue heron and snowy egret a little further out into the shallow water. And then in deeper water in mid-marsh, you see waterfowl like ducks and geese. If you want to explore the inland parts of Cape Cod, the place to start is the trails. The Red Maple Swamp Trail, the Nauset Marsh Trail, the Atlantic White Cedar Swamp Trail, the trails at Pilgrim Heights in North Truro, the Beach Forest Trail in Provincetown, and finally, the longest inland hike of all, the Great Island Trail in Wellfleet. A special feature created a number of years ago in the Province Lands is a loop system of bicycle trails. And many people come to Provincetown just for the purpose of riding the bicycle trails. It's one of the best ways there is to get to know the Province Lands, because the trails loop through every kind of terrain and every kind of plant life, give you an opportunity to see an entire cross-section of everything the Province Lands have to offer. To a lot of people, the symbol of Cape Cod, in fact the symbol of the sea and the sea coast, is the lighthouses. And the lights of outer Cape Cod include Long Point, Wood End, Race Point, the Three Sisters of Nauset and their successor today, the Nauset Lighthouse. And last and most important, Highland Light, which is the first light seen from 20 miles out at sea by vessels inbound toward Boston Harbor from Europe. As we get away from the roads and away from the crowds here on the Outer Cape, take a stroll on the beach or a walk amid the dunes, we can experience some real solitude. It's a rare thing in the northeastern United States, especially in the busy tourist season of summertime Cape Cod. And I think that's one of the great things that Cape Cod National Seashore and especially the Province Lands have to offer.
Chatham is a fishing town as much as any town on the Cape. The fishing is strong there. They have a strong group of commercial fishermen. They have Gold Coast. They have some very big houses. I mean, 20-room, 30-room houses, the way they do in Newport.
Visitors to Cape Cod are often drawn to Chatham for the public band concerts held every Friday night throughout the summer.
Harwich is a different town. Harwich, of course, is more of a cranberry town than the Lower Cape is generally. And, of course, the Upper Cape Horn, Sandwich, Mashpee. That country is a cranberry country, which I know very little about.
There is a certain sort of charisma about us. People find that we're honest.
Hyannis has the most concentration of nightlife, bars, and...
I would say probably New England.
just the hub of the Cape. It's where all the bars are and everything. It's where the college kids can afford it, I think.
Everything concentrated in one area. Well, young people come here because the girls know there's a lot of boys here, and the boys know there's a lot of girls here.
Definitely.
And that's really one of the main reasons they come here.
Definitely a nice spot.
And I come here to make money. This is a sample of the T-shirts I sell. I have 101 different T-shirts.
The one just to the left of it, with the blue hull on it, belongs to Senator Ted Kennedy.
And they have a tour that goes to the Kennedy compound, which is very interesting.
I took that. I took the Kennedy compound.
Sandwich is a very beautiful little town, and it's been well preserved over the years, and there's a lot of history here. There's several museums. There's a glass museum. We have the Heritage Plantation, which is a beautiful facility that has history and gorgeous grounds. The history of the Daniel Webster Inn dates back to the late 1600s. It was opened as a parsonage. In the early 1700s, 1720s, it opened up as a tavern. During the Revolutionary War, it was Patriot headquarters in the area. And after the Revolutionary War, many famous people would come down to the Cape on the stagecoach, and we were one of the first stops. And one of them being Daniel Webster, who came down to hunt and fish and kept the room permanently reserved in the inn for the rest of his life. We're very colonial with all that history. We try to decorate every room differently and incorporate many reproductions or antiques, and every room has a different feel to it. We have many canopy beds, rooms with working fireplaces. One of the concerns we have when we're talking to people, especially from California, from Poway, they think of Cape Cod, they think of, a strip of land with every property on the beach. That, I'm going out to Cape Cod, I want to be right on the beach. And, we are not on the beach, so we have to address their, what we can provide for them. And we're very New England. And, we have a lot of history in this area, and it's a lot calmer and no traffic jams. We don't have that heavy congestion that the ocean side of Cape Cod has.
One of the Cape's most popular towns is Falmouth, where you can find the landmark Nobsca Light. Falmouth is also home to Woods Hole, one of the most unique villages in the region.
The Woods Hole Village is probably best known as being a science enclave. There are a couple of private science research institutions here focusing on the ocean, the largest of which is the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. The Oceanographic Institution has been around since 1930, and we're probably best known for the discovery of the Titanic. The mission of the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution is to do basic science research in the ocean and to educate. It's a little hard to capsulize the institution. We have something like 350 research projects going on at any one time. I would just say that many people think of us as counting fish and finding wrecks, and we really do a lot more than that. We have an exhibit center, very small. It's in a former New England church, but we try to, in a small way, explain something about the ocean and tell visitors something about the importance of the ocean in their lives, and also a little bit about the Oceanographic Institution.
Hi, my name is Paul Conan, and this is the National Marine Fisheries Aquarium in Woods Hole. This is one of the oldest research aquariums in the world. There's been an aquarium on this site since 1885. We have 16 display tanks down below, which are our main display tanks, and right now you're in the behind-the-scenes area. Most aquariums keep you in the display area and don't let you behind the scenes, but we do. The touch tanks are basically like tide pools, and the kids can come through and examine the animals. We have whelks in here, we have fish in here, we have lobsters in here, which are banded, of course, so they won't hurt you. So kids can examine all the animals, and if they're interested in marine biology, they'll know it by coming through here.
It's hard to say what the attraction on Cape Cod is to anybody that lives here and you're used to it. It's kind of funny. The Cape is, 40 miles long, and you're off to the end of Provincetown before you even realize you're on Cape Cod. So it's a very small place with a very big name.
When the Pilgrims arrived in the New World, their first landing was here at Provincetown Harbor, an event this monument recalls. While their ship, the Mayflower, lay at anchor, they gathered to sign the Mayflower Compact, recognized as the first formal set of laws to govern an American colony. Discovering that there was not enough fresh water in Provincetown to support their colony, the Pilgrims set sail across Massachusetts Bay for Plymouth. There they stepped ashore on Plymouth Rock. Today, you can discover that Pilgrim history at Plymouth Plantation. Here you will find a faithfully recreated 17th century colony. Interpreters portraying the early Pilgrims can provide a unique picture of the Capes and the whole country's history. Before long, the growing Plymouth colony needed more room, and their settlements spread back onto the Cape, making the towns here some of the oldest in North America. Traces of their history can still be discovered in the picturesque old houses, windmills, and churches that accent the countryside. The distinctive Cape Cod house became the architectural prototype for a style of home built all over America. The Atwood Higgins house on the bay side of Wellfleet remains one of the best preserved examples of this style. Pat Rotman is the National Seashore's resident expert on the old houses of the Cape.
Well, the first settlers that came here built this style of house, and this was Cape Cod. This is what they built here. And they've built revisions and adaptations all over the country. And it caught on, I think, because it was so completely practical. They tried to build what they were used to in England. They didn't start a new type of home. They carried their culture and their building ideas to this country. The Cape Cod house was sort of what you see is what you get. There's no ornamentation, no frills. This was a working people's house. It was built for working people. There's a central chimney, a central front door. The full Cape has 2 windows on either side, very, very symmetrically, evenly placed. As you travel around Cape Cod, you will find many half capes, 3/4 capes, and full capes. The Cape Cod is very common, and it's called the Cape Cod house, so we identify it with the area. But during this colonial period, there was also what is very often called the colonial, and that would be a 2-story colonial house. By the 1800s, the whaling captains had been around the world, and the fishermen, and they became much more prosperous and brought back ideas from Europe. And there are so many different varieties of homes. The Cape is a place where the homes have been preserved quite well. You go down side roads and you explore and you see a wonderful variety because they weren't built all together. They were built at different times, and so that you see examples from a couple of 100 years of architecture.
As much as the Cape treasures its history, much of it has nevertheless become a valuable commodity for today's tourist trade. Along every road in the Cape, you can find a variety of shops offering a wide range of antiques and historical artifacts. Many of these shops are almost little museums, and they're well worth discovering in order to learn even more about the history of Cape Cod. Although not everyone comes to the Cape for the beaches alone, most visitors eventually discover the seaside wonders at one or more of Cape Cod's famous beaches. The most famous is the 30-mile-long Outer Beach, stretching from Nauset to Truro. On the bay side of Truro, the beach shows a more worldly atmosphere. The various outer beaches of the National Seashore are still the ultimate attraction on a beautiful summer afternoon. To the south, Chatham Beach has recently developed some rolling surf since a storm broke through the outer barrier and created a natural wonder now called the Chatham Break. A dutiful explorer can also find a variety of pleasant beaches scattered along the byways between Chatham and Orleans. towards Dennis and Harwich, the shoreline adopts a different character, as the tourist services now crowd closer to the beach. By the time you get to Hyannis, the beach and the town are virtually one, and the restrictions on beach access begin to be felt. So for this part of the Cape, a quieter alternative is found at Sandy Neck Beach on the bay side of Barnstable, where a more relaxed atmosphere prevails. High on the list of special places treasured by the residents of the area's coast are the various locations for prime viewing of the incredible Cape Cod sunsets. At First Encounter Beach, the reflections of the setting sun over the receding sandbars are enchanting. At the same time, the tip of Cape Cod, from Race Point to Herring Cove, provides ample access to many more of the Cape's finer sunset beach views. Of course, if losing yourself on an endless beach suits your fancy, don't overlook the islands of Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. You've probably already admired the popular Vineyard Beach at Gay Head, as it has long been a photographer's choice for many a calendar cover. On Nantucket, the waves at Surfside Beach make a popular destination for this sport's enthusiasts. No matter the hour of the day or the time of the year, the seashore of Cape Cod and her sister islands invite resident and visitor alike to leave their worries behind and get lost in the magic of a Cape Cod beach.
I'm a professional painter on Cape Cod and loving every minute of it. I've chosen to work on Cape Cod because of its beauty and because of the variety of beauty. The light on the Cape is very silvery. I feel that this is a characteristic of Cape Cod that has a very soft, silvery quality. And I think that there are times where it literally sparkles. I can't think of anything else that is as much fun or as challenging, that takes up 95% of me and utilizes it. Sometimes I can spend 2.5 hours on one painting, and sometimes I can spend 2.5 weeks on a painting. But most of the time, a big percentage of the painting is done in about 2 or 3 hours on location, and then they're finished up in the studio if it's necessary. If I feel a certain way, it can only manifest itself by coming out on the painting. I'm dealing with light and color, and if it comes through my paintings, it's happened of its own accord. It's not necessarily that I'm striving for calmness. I think that the atmospheric conditions on Cape Cod are wonderful and interesting. The juxtaposition of the values and colors and being by the sea means something. It gives me a special feeling. I actually feel like I'm visiting a friend when I go down to the shore. It's healing, actually. Some people say that my paintings make them feel happy. Does that mean that I must be feeling happy in order for that happiness to come through in my painting? I'm not really too sure. But I am happy painting here on Cape Cod. And maybe it just shows itself through my painting.
Directly off the south shore of Cape Cod is the large island of Martha's Vineyard. The earliest recorded European visitor to this island was the same Bartholomew Gosnold who gave Cape Cod its name. Impressed with the profusion of wild grapes he found here, and true to his penchant for titles, he decided to give this lovely vineyard to his daughter, Martha. For almost 150 years, the island has attracted summer visitors to its own version of quiet sophistication. Ever since the whaling days, the island has attracted a rich crowd when the prosperous sea captains of Edgartown built their mansions side by side, surrounded by exquisite Victorian gardens. Today, visitors can wander down narrow streets scented by sweet summer flowers, where rows of graceful homes serve as elegant reminders of genteel holidays enjoyed by generations long ago.
The Daggett House dates back in part to 1660. The fireplace dates back to 1660, and a small area of the dining room was once the island's first tavern. It had a little dirt floor, and all the sailors would get off the boats and come in here and tie one on. The rest of the house was built around that one portion in 1750, and at one time was a rooming house, one time it was a little sailor's store. I like Edgartown the best here on the island of all the towns. It's just, you really feel like you're walking into a bygone era. Walking along North Water Street, where we're situated, you are going to see very majestic homes. They're all white clapboard with beautiful porches, large porches. This street in particular, North Water Street, is noted for its gardens. There's some days I come in here and I can't believe that part of this building is over 300 years old. The main house, the part that dates back to 1660, 1750, is very colonial in feel, I think. I feel that each room is very individual. Each room is individually decorated with period pieces, all different sizes, all different shapes and colors, so you don't feel that you're walking into a room and feeling that the room next door that your neighbor has is going to be the exact same thing. You know that it's different. I think that's very special. Another thing that's very special and distinguishes the Daggett House from a lot of other places is that we have a secret staircase. It's accessible right here by giving a little tug on this door. The bookcase swings open to reveal a stairway. It's a little winding stairway that leads up to a guest room. And just coming up the stairs here, you'll see that there are many champagne and wine bottles. And these are really denotes some very special occasions for people. We give complimentary champagne to our honeymooners or to our anniversary couples or birthdays. And when finished, they just line them up along the wall with their names and their dates. And so these become very nice mementos.
Much of Martha's Vineyard is still a working community. A substantial fishing fleet working out of Menemsha Harbor thrives alongside the active tourist trade. In the middle of the island, there are working farms, and a relaxed country atmosphere prevails. But the vineyard is really a summer place, and its unique mix of people from many backgrounds have created a special history all its own.
My great-grandparents came here, and my mother and father met here when they were in college, so that these houses have been in families for years and years and years.
Al Hart has been coming here for 80 years.
For many years, there were camp meetings on Cape Cod and in Westport, Massachusetts. In 1835, a Methodist minister in Edgartown named Jeremiah Pease discovered here in the outskirts of Edgartown a place which was come to be called Wesleyan Grove. There was no Oak Bluffs. So over the years, up to 15,000 people from the towns of Massachusetts and Rhode Island came here for a week or 10 days, lived in tents which were right where we are now. The reason my house is so small is that it's on a tent space. This one was built in 1867 as the one next door. Not looking the way it was now. It had no porch, it had no balcony, it was a single room. Sides, back, and front, no top. They spread a canvas over it each year they came. Gradually, then, a roof was put on it. The gingerbread that you see all around here actually copies the flounces and the doodads that were on the front of the canvas that they had up top.
That tabernacle was built in 1879 and was erected for $7,200. Last time we painted it on the inside cost us about $35,000 to paint the inside. So these houses have gone down in families for years and years and years, and we now have great-grandchildren, and that'll be 7 generations of families that have been here.
While the Methodist campground is a not-to-be-missed experience, there are hosts of other treats to discover on the vineyard. The old lighthouses here at Edgartown and West Shop are fun to explore, and the views from the old light at Gay Head are superb. The clay cliffs found at Gay Head provide one of the most dramatic landscapes to be found anywhere on the Atlantic coast. Below the cliffs lies a spectacular beach and seemingly endless open sea. Unfortunately, access to most of this magnificent shoreline is now restricted to resident property owners. Just off the harbor in Edgartown is the small island of Chappaquiddick. There is not much to visit there since much of the outer beach is restricted. Even more so since this aging bridge has been closed. This Chappaquiddick Beach Club is obviously private. However, a small Japanese garden called My Toy, nestled in a mid-island grove, rates as a treasured discovery. Overall, the charm of the vineyard is found in those memorable moments of quiet discovery. The stroll down the Victorian street in Oak Bluffs. The magic spell of the quiet salt pond. Or the sunset over the beach at Gay Head.
To the south and east of the Cape lies the far island of Nantucket. Local publicists call it Yesterday's Island, and it is. The discovery of Nantucket is like the discovery of a different way of life. From her cobbled main streets to the ancient fishing shacks in Sconset, a trip to the island is like a trip back in time. Once the island was the capital of the American whaling trade, her pride displayed in the grand homes and the serene sense of style so unique to the island. When the whaling industry collapsed in the mid-1800s, progress and development here came to a complete stop. Ironically, that economic collapse made it possible for today's visitors to walk down cobbled streets that have not changed in 150 years. In fact, the island proudly boasts the last working wind-driven grist mill on the coast. Part of the joy of discovering Nantucket is to stay in one of the old whaling captains' homes that are found throughout the town. Many of these have become fine New England inns. The Anchor Inn, run by Anne and Charles Bayless, is just such a place.
Nantucket is a very special place to come for a vacation. It's not glitz, it's not city, it's not a lot of nightlife. It's more subtle, it's more enjoying nature. We have 1/3 of our island in conservation land, undeveloped land. It's a place to come to relax.
This is called Yesterday's Island because everyone that comes here, almost it's a throwback to yesterday. It's not today. We don't have traffic lights on the island. There isn't a traffic light on the island.
When you get off the boat on Nantucket coming over by ferry, it's a distance in time that kind of helps you relax as you come across the water. And the Nantucket community has traditionally been tied into the water in the whaling community and people going off to sea. And many of the homes on Nantucket, it's like a little time warp of locked-in tradition here of homes that are still lived in and lovingly cared for that have survived through the many, many hundreds of years. Then we have the widows' walks on top of the houses where the women would look for the men coming back from sea. In our neighborhood right here, it's a very convenient walk from the boat, from the steamship ferry. Just come up past the Whaling Museum, up Broad Street to Center Street, and right next to the Congregational Church, you see the big white pointed steeple. We're right next door to that.
The inn was built in 1806. It's a whaling captain's home. It was built by Archelaus Hammond. And Archelaus Hammond was noted as the first man to kill a sperm whale in the Pacific Ocean. We haven't done anything to the inn as far as changing the rooms or doing anything, gutting the rooms or taking the heart out of the inn. We try to maintain that lovingly.
And the rooms, as Charles mentioned, are all named after whaling ships, ships that used to come into Nantucket, reflective of the heritage of the whaling history of the house. But most of them have antiques and period pieces reflective of the time, the classic federal style of the house, the colonial period. We have mostly queen canopy beds. Our neighborhood here is full of history. Across the street from us is Benjamin Franklin's mother's house. It's the first full 3-story house on the island. It's like a little time warp of locked-in tradition here.
And one of the little mysteries of Nantucket, one of the little fantastic things that everyone has just little pocket gardens, but everything is just meticulous. And I think that's the way it was back in the colonial days. I'd love to walk at night, and you're walking the same streets that other people who were here 100, 200 years ago, and nothing is really, we have not reconstructed it exactly the same. The floorboards in the Anchor Inn have been walked on for 200 years by the same people. And I'm always in awe, and I always have been, of just being able to share the past with people who are no longer here, but I still feel their presence.
Nantucket is more than preserved history. The natural splendors of the island provide opportunities for exploration unmatched in areas 10 times as large. On the east end, there is Sankaty Head Light and the charming village of Sconset. Originally just a cluster of fishing shacks for the men of Nantucket Town, Sconset was discovered by the theater people from Broadway at the turn of the century. And it became an artist's colony. Today, its charm remains much as it has always been. Located near the middle of the island is the world's largest cranberry bog. Every fall, these bogs are flooded to allow efficient harvesting by machines that literally beat the cranberries off the ground. The floating berries are then corralled and carted away by the truckload. Surrounding these bogs and spreading through the center of the island are the moors. This area of rolling heath reminds people of Scotland and provide for endless hours of discovery in the quiet world of nature. It is often difficult to get a car on the island, so people who wish to explore the far corners of Nantucket usually choose the island's efficient system of bike trails. And at the end of every trail or road on the island lies the miles of outer beach. The final place to discover another aspect of Nantucket's relaxed and genteel pace.
Wishing to get a better view than I had yet had of the ocean, which we are told covers more than 2/3 of the globe, but of which a man who lives but a few miles inland may never see any trace, more than of another world, I made a visit to Cape Cod in October of 1849 and another the succeeding June. The most foreign and picturesque structures on the Cape, to an inlander, are the windmills. Gray-looking octagonal towers with long timber slanting to the ground in the rear, and there, resting on a cartwheel, by which their fans are turned round to face the wind. Being on elevated ground and high in themselves, they serve as landmarks. Sailors making the land commonly steer either by windmills or by the meeting houses. In the country, we are obliged to steer by the meeting house alone. Yet the meeting house is a kind of windmill, which runs one day in 7, turned either by the winds of doctrine or by public opinion. At length, we entered what had appeared at a distance an upland marsh, but proved to be dry sand covered with beach grass, bearberry, bayberry, and slightly ascending. Then we crossed over a belt of sand on which nothing grew. The roar of the sea sounded scarcely louder than before, but we suddenly stood on the edge of a bluff overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. Far below us was the beach, a long line of breakers rushing to the strand. The sea was exceedingly dark and stormy, the sky completely overcast. There! I had got the Cape under me, as much as if I were riding it barebacked. It was not as on the map, or as seen from the stagecoach, but there I had found it, all out of doors, huge and real, Cape Cod. I wished to see that seashore where man's works are wrecks, to put up at the true Atlantic house, where the ocean is landlord as well as sea lord, and comes ashore without a wharf for the landing, where the crumbling land is the only invalid, or at best is but dry land, and that's all you can say of it. The seashore is a sort of neutral ground, a most advantageous point from which to contemplate this world. It is even a trivial place. The waves, forever rolling to the land, are too far traveled and untamable to be familiar. It is a wild, rank place, and there is no flattery in it. This sandbank, the backbone of the Cape, rose directly from the beach to a height of 100 feet or more above the ocean. It was with singular emotions that we first stood upon it and discovered what a place we had chosen to walk on. It was like the escarped rampart of a stupendous fortress. The white breakers were rushing to the shore. The foam ran up the sand and ran back as far as we could see. The breakers looked like droves of 1,000 wild horses of Neptune, rushing to the shore, with their white manes streaming far behind. And when at length the sun shone for a moment, their manes were rainbow-tinted. Having passed the narrowest part of the waist of the Cape, we crossed over to the bayside, not a half a mile's distance, in order to spend the noon on the nearest shrubby hill in Provincetown, called Mount Ararat. From this sand hill, covered with beach grass and bushes to its top, on the edge of the desert, we overlooked the shrubby hill and swamp country which surrounds Provincetown on the north, and protects it in some measure from the invading sands. Notwithstanding the universal barrenness, I never saw an autumnal landscape so beautifully painted as this was. It was like the richest rug imaginable spread over an uneven surface. No damask, nor velvet, nor Tyrian dye or stuffs, nor the work of any loom could ever match it. There was the incredibly bright red of the huckleberry, and the reddish brown of the bayberry, mingled with the bright and living green of the small pitch pines. This was a part of the furniture of Cape Cod. We had for days walked up the long and bleak piazza which runs along her Atlantic side, and then over the sanded floor of her halls, and now we were being introduced into her boudoir. The time must come when this coast will be a place of resort for those New Englanders who really wish to visit the seaside. At present, it is wholly unknown to the fashionable world, and probably it will never be agreeable to them. But this shore will never be more attractive than it is now. Here is the spring of springs, the waterfall of waterfalls. A storm in the fall or winter is the time to visit it. A lighthouse or a fisherman's hut, the true hotel. A man may stand there and put all America behind him.
New England holds a special place in the American heart. From the rock-bound coast of Maine to the quiet of a mountain village, there is a sense of enduring beauty and timeless values. Now you can experience the magic of New England through Sight Productions' series of video portraits. These prize-winning video tours offer you a chance to live and relive the wonder of the real New England, and to meet some of the people that make any visit memorable. In Portrait of Boston, you can discover the American Revolution along the Freedom Trail, mix with the crowds at Quincy Market, explore old neighborhoods and parks, and spend time in quaint Beacon Hill. And you can ride on the historic swan boats.
The swan boats are a symbol of Boston, just like the cable car in San Francisco or the Empire State Building in New York City. They were started in 1876 by a man named Robert Paget. Now, he's the grandfather of
Cape Cod and the islands takes you to the Cape Cod National Seashore, then down the streets of the quaint old towns. You'll visit the summer island of Martha's Vineyard and the historic island of Nantucket, and just spend some time relaxing on the beach. You'll find the special beauty of Cape Cod with a local painter.
I'm a professional painter on Cape Cod and loving every minute of it. I've chosen to work on Cape Cod because of its beauty and because of the variety of beauty. The light on the Cape is very silvery.
New Hampshire's White Mountains and Clear Lakes takes you to one of America's oldest resort destinations. Here you can visit the loons, explore Mount Washington, and ride on a historic lake steamer. You'll find Franconia Notch and thrill to the autumn foliage, collect sap for maple syrup, and visit a country fair.
What's special about Sandwich Fair is the location, the time of the year with the foliage, and the events going on. We have a round circuit of events going on continuous for 3 days. And of the town of Sandwich, it's got a long tradition of country people.
In the Maine coast, you will experience the grandeur of Acadia National Park and the romance of the Lonely Lighthouse. You'll go fishing for lobster and discover the rugged coastline with its quiet coves. And you'll set sail on a Maine windjammer.
She's a 90-foot schooner that we carry passengers for hire on. She's typical of the kind of vessel that was built 100 years ago on this coast to haul freight and cargoes up and down the coast. She was built specifically.
Newport and the Rhode Island coast will take you to the queen of American resorts. Here you can discover the excesses of the Gilded Age, the romance of colonial Newport, and the excitement of world-class yacht racing. And America's oldest 4th of July parade.
It's the oldest and largest in the country. And this is a year-round celebration, year-round work to get it set for this day.
In Vermont, there is the timeless appeal of the Green Mountains with their well-tended farms and fishing rivers. You can discover the quaint villages and autumn splendor that makes the state famous. Here there are folk arts and balloon rides, mountain music and maple sugar. There's even a day on the family farm.
My mother said that as soon as I was able to creep, I used to start for the barn frequently, so I guess I've been farming almost all the 82 years. There's a degree of independence and just love of the land and love of the animals and that sort of thing.
So come along and discover the real New England. Choose your favorite destinations and order now. These tapes are only $24.95 each, Or even better, $19.95 each when you order 3 or more. So call 1-800-424-0030 now to order a special memory of your own piece of New England.